Hello, my name is Donnie McNichol from Team Animation, and I'd like to talk to you about organisational delivery approach. In particular, how you develop an approach that works for an organisation. This was the subject of a LinkedIn article, which we're just now breaking down and I'm presenting as part of this video. So would your organisation, the key question was, would your organisation benefit from a project or portfolio delivery approach that meets customer needs and fits with the culture? That was the whole premise of it. So we recently completed 2 parallel assignments to design and implement a new portfolio and project management frameworks with different organisations. One was a specialised engineering company and another a marketing technology company. Projects with the primary product and service for both organisations, and different in nature, but ultimately they had a portfolio of projects that they won primarily through a competitive process, so not unlike a lot of organisations. The assignments were broad in nature, as included not only the development of the approach, but also capability development, including setting up of a portfolio office function and training of project leaders, some coaching to the executive and so on. And also the change management aspects, including briefing of stakeholders and communication with the wider community. The assignments were rewarding and enjoyable as the benefits were immediate and measurable, giving a nice warm glow at the end of a week. Because they were a medium-sized organisation, you could see the benefit of it quickly. And interestingly, much of what is written about project and portfolio management is about how internal change is dealt with. The reality for many organisations is that projects is what they deliver. It's what they're there for. And it's actually about the focus extern. What I'm interested in is about how project and programme and portfolio management is applied externally. And one of my future projects is to write a book on organisational project management to try and pick up on this particular aspect as to how do you get medium-sized organisations to adopt these ways of working, so that it's not just for major organisations that have got central capability, but so that smaller, medium-sized organisations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through. So here are the 7 considerations when developing a framework. I'm going to go through each of these one by one and talk you through it. I'll just leave this slide up here and talk through each one of them individually. So the first one, organisations are complex systems and therefore need to be treated as such. What does that mean? Well, consideration needs to be given to the relationship between the structures, processes, networks that exist within organisations. Not only in the design of the approach, but also how it interacts with other functions such as marketing, sales and operations. You can't ignore the fact that the organisation is complex and has ways of working. You need to fit in with those. In turn, this impacts how the approach is positioned, sold and adopted by the organisation in different bits of the business. It must fit and be seen as value within the overall system or parts of the system. It'll end up slowing, if not halting, the adoption. What does that mean in practice? Well, you may get somebody, let's just take an example, it clashing into finance. You put in place a project delivery approach or portfolio approach that does not support finance. You do not provide them with the information, they won't provide you with the information. So you need to think about that again, relationships. The second is the approach must meet customer needs. There are many reasons for an organisation to invest in developing its capability, but most powerful comes from an explicit or implicit demand from its customers and market. As contracts become fixed price, which is happening to a lot of organisations, delays and cost overruns become unacceptable, and right first time is the exception. Companies need to act to first of all survive and then look to differentiate themselves by the quality of the service they offer. And if their service is projects, then that's what they've got to focus on. And consolidation of products and services and consistency of delivery are key for many organisations now. So that the consistency was one of the key things for one of the organisations, because they didn't have that consistency and reliability about the way their projects. There was no way of knowing how the project would go. So that's 2. So the third one was the approach needs to be developed and implemented at a speed that suits circumstances, if you will, the organisation. Both of the organisations in parallel were going through high levels of change themselves. One was being taken over at the time. And it was over an extended period of time. Another one was merging with another organisation. One, through dealing with legacy issues in an earlier merger, The change in organisation, delivery model, restructure and so on, these made it very challenging to try and implement a model. The design and adoption of the approach continued as the executive were keen to see the momentum maintained, but this inevitably meant constant replanning and a need for flexibility from all those involved. So you've just got to accept the fact that sometimes you can't do it quite as quickly as you like. Key there is about setting expectations about how quickly things can actually be achieved. Next point is the approach needs to fit with the culture of the organisation. As we all know, standard off-the-shelf approaches are often criticised for being inappropriate, but they can be a great foundation if you're clear about what modifications are required to suit the organisational culture and the myriad of other factors that you need to take into account. The two organisations were very different from each other, but culturally they both had a very low level of centralisation and collaboration. Therefore, the approach we developed helped them to fit within that culture, but also to try and change the culture so that there was a higher level of centralisation and also a higher level of collaboration. Even what was presented and communicated had to be carefully considered. As for one of the organisations, the form of what was articulated, it was important that it looked right. It was really important to them as an organisation, given what they did. Next point is you need to think at a portfolio as well as a project level. As I explained earlier, the portfolio for these organisations was some of the work they did for their customers, and to a much lesser degree the changes they were making internally, which still require resources and energy, of course. In both organisations, the portfolio layer was worked on in parallel, but just behind the work and project delivery capability. So they wanted the focus to be on the project, improving the projects, but also they wanted the portfolio to be understood, i.e. the collection of all of the projects. This ensured that all levels of the organisation were involved and value could be demonstrated as quickly as possible as project planning, monitoring, control improved. So finance was getting information at a portfolio level. The executive were starting to get some glimpses and ideas about what was happening collectively at the same time. And I mentioned to you much of what is written and talked about around project portfolio management is about how internal change is dealt with. The reality for most organisations is that projects are what they deliver. It therefore requires that it's a different perspective and application of project and portfolio management. I don't think it's often internal change projects and programmes that are the focus, not external to the market, whether you're a law firm delivering on matters or whether you're some other form of organisation. Generally, you are delivering projects for many types of organisations. Next point is implement governance changes as quickly as you can. Changes to organisational structures, roles and responsibilities, decision making, meeting structures, information flow, etc. are critical to the success of any new delivery approach, and therefore it's important to introduce these changes as soon as possible. This gets to, in some ways, a part of the behavioural change because it really hits people quickly. These changes impact people, and it's quite an impact. In one of the organisations, the portfolio board was created and had already started adding value before the end of the assignment, providing an impetus for the adoption of new enhanced framework. And that was great. The executives were given information they'd never had before. Next point is the community must be involved from the start. Critical to the success of both of these was in having a working group of practitioners, those people who would be relying on this project and portfolio approach to help improve performance. They helped shape the solution, they advised in the best ways of implementing and acted as champions for the new ways of work, so they had to be involved and engaged in it. Change management therefore started from the first meeting when we sketched out a broad plan of action and straw man framework for early discovery and conceptual work about, for example, what the life cycle was going to look like. The working group could add to, take away from and take ownership for each of the different component parts. And in one of the organisations, the bulk of the development work in some aspects was done by the working group. We just simply facilitated and focused on some of the more specialised areas. So I stopped at 7 points there, but there were around about another 12 points, I think. Things like, for example, the assessment of risk at a portfolio and project level, the minimum portfolio and project delivery framework. What's the minimum standard that you can implement just to get the initial value that people are looking for. So there are other points to consider, but I think that's a good number of points to consider and think about. And here's an example of a framework developed for a client. It just picks up on we developed a life cycle very broadly, and then we talked about for each of the projects, there was an initiation phase of each of the project, there was a delivery phase, there was a close down, and projects actually went from the kind of win stage of the project right through to the live, because projects came in, they won the work commercially, there was a sales process in advance of this, and then there was a live projects, they often went on to do long-term support of what was developed. So this whole framework, and underneath this we had various components and elements to help. And in fact, one of the things was we identified for project managers the daily activities, weekly activities, and monthly activities. They were very keen to be that explicit because the community was not very experienced, to lay it out exactly what was required. And then, of course, allow them to use professional judgment on it. So that's just one of the examples of what a framework might look like for the organisation I've called ACME here. So if you want to view the full article, you can on LinkedIn. If you go into the LinkedIn feed and my profile, you should be able to find it. I hope you found that of interest and got some value from it. Thank you very much.